So, you want to have a Michelin star experience in south of France? Well, I'm going to share with you my experience recently going to Marseille to a Michelin star restaurant at Alcyone. I haven't been to many Michelin star restaurants, however I have been to a handful, and I wanted to share my experience recently going to a Michelin star as opposed to some of the previous times that I've been, and what really makes a Michelin star stand out. To get the rating of a Michelin star, you have to have something unique, a bit of je ne sais quoi, as they say in French, about you to gain your star. The recent restaurant that I went to had a beautiful display when you walked in. It was based at the Intercontinental Hotel on the 3rd floor, and when you got up to the 3rd floor, you would notice the massive window displays that they had. This was right throughout the restaurant, and it was very understated. They had massive windows, mirrors, and vases, but nothing else. It was very simple, and the tables were also really large. The tables were sturdy, concrete, and they were glazed really nicely with a polish. We were no closer than 3 meters apart from the other guest. I found that this was really good for private conversation and making you feel like you were not distracted while having your course. There was an option of having either a 5-course meal or a 8-course meal. I went for the 5-course because I know that they usually have them quite spaced out, and by the end of it I'm always quite full. So 5-course is more than enough for me, and I think most people do find that 5-course is quite satisfying. We'll ask which wine we would like to have as an accompany for the courses. Now you can have a pairing for each course, so this usually has about 3 to 4 different types of wines that you can have, and they will make sure that they meticulously choose which wines that would be best suited for each of the course. When you have a degustation course like this, you will notice that the food will take you on a journey. So it's not very linear, it does change throughout, but how it's decided and what courses come first are really well thought out. So the first thing that comes on the table is usually the cutlery. So after they've done the cutlery, then they will serve you with the wine, and you will commence your night by just sitting, relaxing, talking, and the staff will be very attentive. So at this restaurant, they were extremely fast to fill up the water, and when they would fill up the water, they would always turn around the bottle so it was facing the customer. So that is really important to know what you were drinking, and if you wanted to have a look at it without having to touch the bottle. I find that it's the key little things that they do that will make their rating high. So it's all about making sure that the table is clean and everything is presented nicely. There's a reason for everything on the table. When the cutlery holders came out, they were in a ceramic kind of resin holder. The napkins were placed in these ceramic holders. I took them out, put them on my lap as you do when you go to a restaurant, but then I wasn't sure what to do with the napkin holders. So after having a little look, I actually stood it up on the table, and that's when a waiter came over and said, so these would be your cutlery houses. So they put them flat back on the table, and every time they changed the cutlery, they would pop them into it like a little cave, and then you would take it out. So we had bread as a starter, and what was so interesting about the bread is there was a big block of butter, and it was just placed on a little plate, and it had a stamping in the butter, and I was wondering at first what this was. The waiter soon came around and explained that Marseille is very famous for their soap making. They have a long history of making soaps, and what is special about their soaps is they usually contain 70 to 80% of olive oil. Now, they explained that they had tried to make this composition with the butter, very oily butter, but it just did not work very well. So they had about 22% of olive oil in the butter. It also had a very salty grit, and this was quite a nice touch. It was unique. It didn't taste like regular butter. So we started with a palate cleanser, and the palate cleanser was a little bit of tomato lemonade. As soon as I heard tomato lemonade, my ears pricked up because I'm not a big fan of tomato in juices, but I was like, interesting. Tried it, it was very refreshing and sparkly. It almost tastes like kombucha, and it did a good job at cleansing the palate. After that, we had some puttanesca. It was 3 fish dishes, and they were really small, which they usually start in most fine dining experiences with a little bit of fish or crackers or something very easy to sort of just get your taste buds enticed. After that, we were served a tomato salad, and this was a huge concoction of different flavors. It was quite pungent. It was like a tomato vinaigrette, but it was also plum. So it had plum vinaigrette through that as well. And then you had the greens, and then in there you had oysters, mussels, and mango. It was a very complex array of flavors, and this was very nice to taste on its own. You could have it with the bread, but what I noticed, if I had cut some of the olive oil butter and then I'd had some of the tomato, they clashed heavily. So I really didn't like the flavors when I combined them together, but on their own, they were quite unique and special. Then we had the Brûle Basset milkshake, which was not to be mixed together. This was very clearly instructed to us. You would just dip the spoon right down to the bottom and then scoop up, and this had different layers of flavors. So there was a fish layer, there was a creamy potato layer, and then there was like a bolognese meat layer. Now you would think those flavors would not go great together, and yes, mixed all together and let set, they would not taste very good, but this milkshake had a very complex journey. So when you tasted it first, you would taste the meat, and then you would taste the creamy potato, and then the palate would sort of change and intensify, and then you would have a fish aftertaste. Now obviously the fish portion was quite small, so it really came at the end, but it was very clever, and I could imagine it would take a long time to develop something like this. Then we went on to our first main, which was the brick mullet with fennel and béarnaise sauce. This was really nice. It was perfectly done fish.
I don't know if you know the city of Toulouse. Toulouse is in the southwest of France.
Okay.
And the city is very famous for the bricks. And our chef is come from Toulouse. So we decided to use the brick to cook the remoulade. The brick, sorry, in the oven at 250 degrees. When it's hot, we take it from the oven and we put the remoulade raw inside. And the remoulade cooked in 2 minutes just in front of you.
It had a very vibrant color of like a salmony kind of pink, and I really liked the béarnaise sauce that they paired with it. There was one bone at the end, which obviously they tried their best to get out. We did mention that there was a bone in there, but it is obviously, you know, something that can happen, but it was overall a really good dish. Then the second main that we had was the garlic and beef. The garlic and beef was done medium rare, also made with a plum sauce. Now you notice there's a bit of a running theme with the plum sauce throughout these dishes, which was quite interesting and very fresh. It wasn't done overpoweringly with the beef. It was a bit more of a vinaigrette. It did work quite nicely, and then there was also a little bit of mushroom on the side. There was another dish right in the middle. It was green and it had a caviar flavor. I really did enjoy this. It was very filling. I actually found out after the milkshake I was quite full, so having the beef after that, I was then beginning to sort of struggle and hit my limit, but I soldiered on and got through to the next. Finally, after 2 mains, you can get on to dessert. Now there was a 2-step dessert. The first one was a palate cleanser, because after you have the starter, usually you would have a palate cleanser, and then after the mains you'll have a palate cleanser, just so that you're not jumping straight into dessert. It's all about easing yourself in. So the palate cleansers usually consist of something that is like a sorbet or lemonade, something that a bit bubbly that will really help to get you introduced into the more creamier dishes for dessert. The palate cleanser was a spicy sorbet with a bit of olive oil mousse. There's that olive oil coming in again. When I heard this, I was quite shocked. Oh, is it going to be overpowering? But it wasn't. The olive oil was very subtle in this one, and it just gave it a little bit more of a creamier feeling, a little bit more of a neutral feeling as well. And I really like the spiciness of the sorbet because it really did give you a kick, as well as it being kind of bubbly and refreshing, really mixed to perfection. Then we had the main dessert, which was a bit of confit. It was like a sugary kind of exterior, kind of like a hard candy, and then inside you had the creamy, the custardy mixture. It kind of was like a bit of cheesecake with a bit of biscuit in there, a little bit of sorbet on the side, and a bit of sauces, which I do believe one of them had plum in there as well. The dessert was one of my favorites. I've never had a dessert that tasted like this. I found it really sensational and I enjoyed it thoroughly. Then that was it for the courses. I really did enjoy them, and I did know that it was my birthday, so there was sort of something coming around the corner, usually like a birthday cake, but I wasn't really sure how that was going to come about. So what happened, we had another glass of wine and we were just sitting there for a little while. One of the waiters came around and distracted me saying, "Oh, you've dropped something on the floor. There's something on the floor over there. Look, just over there on the floor." And I was really distracted. I was kind of like, where is it? What did I drop? Thinking I didn't wear earrings that night and I wasn't sure what it could be. And I was just like kind of looking, and then all of a sudden a birthday cake came around. And it was a very small birthday cake. It was kind of like a cheesecake and it was really nice. I could barely get any of it in, but usually cakes are a bit of an afterthought, but I really did enjoy the flavors of this one. Then after that, they also surprised us with a big rock on the table. There was a bit of a theme in the room. There was a few rocks around, and the waiter gave me a hammer and asked me to smash the rock with the hammer. And I was like, okay, I knew it wasn't a real rock, but I was like, this is very random. And I grabbed the hammer and gave it a little tap and it broke. It was made out of sugar, and there was all these beautiful little lollies individually wrapped for us to take home. I really found it quite amazing, and the whole experience really was so entertaining. And I think this is what really separated the experience from the other places that I've been to, just because they made it very fun, interactive and light. The people there working were really knowledgeable of everything. They did not have to pause or think about anything once. They were very skilled, and I really did enjoy this experience. They also gave us the menu complimentary, just to remember what you had on this time. This also helped with the video to just recap exactly what we had. And yeah, it's all in French, which I had to translate, but I found that it was just a really nice touch to have as well. So that is my experience fine dining in Marseille. I definitely highly recommend the Alcyone restaurant. It was really cool and fun, and the location was fabulous. I would highly recommend, and I would definitely go there again for their next seasonal fine dining. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you want to see more fine dining experiences, luxury unboxings, and the occasional tea video. We'll see you in the next one.